How's it going, everyone? Marriland here, and that's right, I'm back with another booster box opening video. This time, well, like last time really, it's of X and Y Furious Fists. That's right, we get another booster box opening of this set because it's so furious. Well, actually, you know what? The goal with this box opening video is to sort of provide an insight to more beginner players, to kind of see some of the cards that might not be super duper competitive, but a standard player might be able to find in, one or two booster packs and maybe add to their deck. If you are a competitive player, well, you might want to look at my previous Furious Fist box opening video, simply because, that one will be a little bit more geared towards totally competitive players. This one's geared more towards helping newer players get some ideas for things that might be fun for decks, even if they're not Worlds winning decks. On top of that, I'm also giving away one of these beauties. Well, actually, I'm giving away a set of this, plus one of each of the theme decks. I mentioned this in my previous theme deck opening videos, so definitely check that out. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm even giving away two sets. Yeah, that's right. So, you get two chances. Each winner will win one of these, plus the two theme decks. So that's really cool. So, you might want to take a look at the description of this video to see where the contest is being held. It's really a giveaway more than a contest. Also, one thing to keep in mind, this only lasts until October 6, 2014. So be sure to enter by then if you want a chance to win. But even if you're watching this after the fact, it'll still help give you an idea of some of the cards that are useful in Furious Fists. And again, if you're a competitive player who really knows what's up, this is probably going to be a longer box opening video because it's geared towards newer players who, they might have seen a Pokemon card or two, but don't really have an idea of, what good cards are or even what decent cards are. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help those players out. So if you're not interested, you can go ahead and leave right now. That's totally fine. If you are interested, or if you just want to see what I get, or hear my thoughts on some of the more random cards in Furious Fists, well, stick around. Additionally, due to the length of this, box opening thingy, I think I very well may split it up into two videos, one for each half of the box here. Because remember, a booster box comes with 36 booster packs in it. And that's what you'll be able to win if you check out the link in the description. At least if you do that before, October 6, 2014. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open up the first half of this box to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that might be useful if you are beginning your journey as a Pokemon trading card game player. By the way, these booster boxes, they tend to vary in price. Each booster pack is about $4 US, or at least that's the standard rate. But sometimes you can get a deal on the booster boxes. Again, they contain 36 booster packs. You can sometimes find them for 90 bucks or so online, but that's for a set of 36. You don't necessarily need 36 in order to start playing either. So that being said, let's go ahead and open up the first booster pack in this sealed booster box of X and Y Furious Fists. So we have a Slack Off here. If you've seen the theme deck videos, you've already seen both that and Noibat, really. Nothing too fancy there. There is also a Drowsy here. Again, nothing too much. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the basic Pokemon. Patrat, Shroomish. A Klefki. So this Klefki has an ability, Secret Key. Each of your fairy Pokemon's resistance is now -40 instead of -20. So that actually gives this thing a -40 resistance to dark because it does apply to itself. It doesn't have to be active in order for this to happen, so that's kind of nice. It does have an ability, Fairy Lock, which does 30 damage and the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. This may be handy if you're playing the Enchanted Echo deck, because it's a basic Pokemon, and if you're playing the Victory Bell that comes in the deck, using Fairy Lock can actually prevent the foe from retreating to get around the poison damage. Because remember, if you retreat, or if a Pokemon evolves, it heals all the status conditions. And since Victory Bell burns and poisons... No, I think it's confuses and poisons. you basically prevent them from doing anything about that. Now, here is a foil card. Oh yeah. Some people call them holofoils, some people just call them foils. I think I tend to just call them foils. But anyway, it is the normal foil Clawitzer. For 1 water, it does reverse thrust for 30 damage. You switch this Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. That's kind of interesting, although you have to do that, so sometimes it can get in the way unless you have something with free retreat. Its second attack, Splash Cannon. It does 50 damage plus 20 more damage for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. Now, what makes this really nice is that's not each water energy that isn't used to pay for this attack's energy cost. It takes 3 colorless energy, meaning you can use 3 of any type to provide the energy cost for it. However, if you put, say, 3 water to cover that energy cost, it would do the extra 20 damage for each of those water, meaning for 3 water energy, this is doing 110 damage for just the 3. That's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Okay, Weeping Bell. Well, we've seen that before. Again, not too much there. So this is one of those stadium cards. I did not get a chance to talk about stadium cards in the theme deck opening videos, but what they do, you place them in play sort of off to the side between your deck and your opponent's prize cards. So, you know, if this were a place, I'd put it kind of right over there, I think. If my deck were here and my opponent's prize cards were there, if you're both playing properly. This affects both players simultaneously, and you do that effect. It prevents all damage done to benched Pokemon by attacks, both yours and your opponent's. So that's kind of useful. It's actually pretty darn decent. Only one of those can be placed in play, though, at a time, and once you place another one in play, the previous one gets discarded. Anyway, here's another type of trainer card. This type is an item card, which you can see from the text that says item up there. We've seen that before, but there's another little subtype here. See this thing that says Pokemon Tool? Well, you actually attach this card to one of your Pokemon that doesn't already have a tool attached to it. Sort of like in the game where, you know, you give a Pokemon an item, and then it has this effect. In this case, if the fighting Pokemon this card is attached to has full hit points and would be knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, that Pokemon is not knocked out, and its remaining hit points becomes 10 instead, and then you discard this card. It's actually a lot like the Focus Sash in the game, except it only works for fighting Pokemon. Now, this in the back here is a trading card game online code. You can actually play the trading card game online, sort of like a computer program. And you can even get special codes in each booster pack and theme deck and other different types of packs too, like blister packs or other various ones, which I will show you in the future. But all you need to do is take the code that's on this card and then input it online once you've registered an account. I'm going to show this code, but this is the only one I'm going to show for now. Also, if you have a webcam, I think you can scan this part right there to instantly type it up, which is pretty neat. I'm not going to show each and every code. These are single-use codes. The first person that uses this will be the only one who gets it. So if you try to type this in, if you're not one of the first to view this video, it probably won't work for you. But that's fine. If you open up your own booster packs, you can amass several different cards thanks to those. So that's pretty cool. Okay, now let's go ahead and open up booster pack number 2. I know it takes forever to open a booster pack. What's the matter with you, Marriland? Well, you know what? I'm explaining things to you. That's what I figured. The last booster box opening was more of a standard one. I like to take the time to look at some of the cards anyway, but I want to go more in depth with this video, just to kind of gear it towards newer players who might have seen some cards and don't know how they work. So Magmar, probably not much to talk about with that, really. Gothita, sort of the same thing. Makuhita, I think we've already seen that in the theme deck. Machop, well, yeah, we've seen that too, I'm pretty sure. Hey, there's the Clauncher. We could use this with the Clawitzer that we got in the last pack. It's not all that remarkable, but hey, you know what? It's a basic Pokemon. Ooh, a reverse foil Electabuzz. That looks kind of neat. So if you see cards like this, by the way, that's the reverse foil version of them. Pretty much every card, other than like Pokemon-EX and stuff, comes in a reverse foil version. For instance, if you look down here at the collector number, it still says, oh, what is it, 29 out of 111, common. But this is the reverse foil version of it, so that's kind of nifty. Alright, here's a Beartic. This thing, it's kind of interesting. It's not, like, fantastic by any means, but if you're a beginner and you're looking for some water types, it has a lot of hit points, 130 on a stage 1. Igloo hold for 2 colorless, that means 2 of any type. It does 20 damage plus 20 more damage for each colorless in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. So if you were to fight another Beartic, that would do another 80 damage. And that's just for 2 colorless energy. That's not too shabby. Now, a lot of things just have 1 or maybe 2 retreat costs. 4 is rather uncommon. So it's not consistently going to do a lot of damage, but even, 2 for 20 isn't terrible. Additionally, Mountain Drop, although it's pricey, taking 2 water energy and 2 colorless, it does 80 damage, and if there's any stadium card in play, it does 40 more. So 80 for 4, not too shabby, particularly starting out. But 120 for 4 is even tastier. So that's kind of decent if you're starting with a water deck and you don't have all that much. Karina. So here's a card that I talked about in the, the Dark Hammer, I think, theme deck. And basically, you search your deck for a fighting Pokemon and an item card. You reveal them and you put them into your hand. That's useful for getting any of your fighting Pokemon in your deck, as well as an item card. And there are a lot of different item cards. Again, item card being one of the subtypes of trainer, like this is a supporter. If you get any of these, you want to make sure you probably have about, I don't know, I'd say 3 or 4 in your Dark Hammer deck, because that'll definitely help out in getting your fighting type Pokemon, which is really cool. Alright, then we have Poliwhirl. Not all that fantastic really, except, actually, in looking at it, that for a stage 1 that isn't even fully evolved, 3 for 50, while that may seem just kind of mediocre at first, if your opponent's active Pokemon already has any damage counters on it, that means before you use the attack, it does 50 more, so that's 3 colorless, 3 of any type, and it could potentially do 100 damage. This would be very helpful in some sort of bench spread or damage spread deck, which basically relies on doing damage to bench Pokemon. Because it only takes 1 damage counter on a bench Pokemon for finishing blow to do more damage, which is pretty neat. However, with cards like the mountain thing, the stadium card, yeah, it doesn't always work. Well, there's that Machoke. Oh, here, you know what? I accidentally revealed it, but I'll give it to you anyway. There you go. Not giving them all. I can't even talk. I'm not giving them all to you, though. But, we'll do that. And usually every time I pull a Pokemon-EX, I like to celebrate by revealing the card. So, let's see. We have another one of those Electabuzz, except this is the normal version. Nothing too fancy about that. Gothita, we've already seen that. We've already seen the Makuhita. There's a Lickitung. I showed that in the Enchanted... Wait, was it Enchanted Echo? I don't remember. No, I don't think it was. I think this was in the Dark Hammer deck as well. And, it's pretty okay, I guess. I mean, it evolves into Licky Licky, which is much better. There's Poliwag. Not all that great, really. But, at the same time, your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. It only does 20, so that kind of stings for 3, but that Pokemon can't retreat next turn, so you kind of keep him there for a bit, which is cool. Here's a Minun that's reverse foil. A little difficult to read. It's not all that great, but you do put 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand if you use that first attack. So that's kind of nifty. Alright, here is a Flygon! Oh, that's awesome. So Flygon is a Dragon-type Pokemon. If you are familiar with the card game from way back, you probably won't recognize this type, because dragons used to be colorless for some reason. Well, in, what was it? EX, Dragons Exalted, I think? They added the Dragon type, which is pretty cool. So, Flygon here has the attack Rainbow Shower for 1 colorless energy. With that, you attach as many basic energy cards as you like from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. So if you combine that with things like, Professor's Letter that searches for 2 basic energy, you can use this and it gets around the rule of attaching only 1 energy per turn. So you definitely want to have a lot of energy when you use that Rainbow Shower attack, because it'll power up your Pokemon really quickly, which is nice. For 1 grass, 1 fighting, and then 1 colorless energy, it does Sand Sweep for 70. Now what makes that really nice is you heal 30 damage from each of your Pokemon that has any energy attached to it. So that's kind of nice. For anything on your bench that might have had a retreat but still has a little bit of energy on it, you can use this to just sweep away all that damage, or at least 30 at a time. Plus, 3 for 70 isn't terrible. It's not a super hard-hitting Pokemon, but the healing and the energy attachment is pretty nice. And it only has 1 retreat too, so that's cool. Sail Fossil. Now, while this may not look all that remarkable right now, this is an important card for one of the fossil Pokemon, Amora. In order to get that into play, you need to use either this or another supporter card called the Fossil Researcher. If you use the trainer, the item here, the Sail Fossil, you look at the bottom 7 cards of your deck. You may reveal an Amora you find there and put it onto your bench. So you don't put it in your hand, you put it on your bench because it's considered a restored Pokemon, not a basic. You can't actually just play it from your hand. You have to use this or the Fossil Researcher to, well, play it in the first place. Hey, it's Raichu! So, Raichu here, not all that fantastic, but, you know, it's got some basic attacks. I don't feel the need to actually go over them, but Electro Ball for 80 isn't that bad. Oh, hey, speaking of which, so if you don't want to go the route of the fossils themselves, you can just use Fossil Researcher. It uses up your supporter card for the turn, but you search your deck for up to 2 in any combination of Amora or Tyrant, and put them onto your bench, and then shuffle your deck afterward. So with this, you place them directly onto your bench. You don't need to use that item card and hope to find them on the bottom. You just plain and simple get them from your deck. But being a supporter card, you can't play any other supporter cards during that turn. So it's sort of a trade-off. The fossils aren't like, you know, top tier competitive by any means, but early on, they may do some heavy damage. And they're pretty easy to come by, so keep that in mind. Alright, we have Torchic here. You know, rather basic, although, quick attack, if you get heads with that, it does 30 more damage, so that's 40, potentially 40, for 2. You just have to get heads. Hey, it's a Clefairy. So this Clefairy, I think, is actually different than the one in the Enchanted Echo deck. It's not all that great, but it keeps in the theme with the Clefable. For 1 fairy energy, it does 10 with Moonblast, and you reduce any damage done by the defending Pokemon by 10. So that's kind of cool. It helps give it a little bit of extra buffer. Alright, Shroomish, we have that. Hey, it's another Pancham. So, 70 hit points is kind of cool. For 2 colorless, you flip 4 coins and it does 10 damage times the number of heads, so it can do up to 40. But it might do 0, which would stink. Pikachu! Yeah, pretty basic. 20, you get heads, the opponent's paralyzed. Hey, it's a foil Fossil Researcher. Well, isn't that neat? Ooh, a Noivern. So, I'm pretty sure it's the Enchanted Echo deck that has the Noibat. It doesn't really do any good. But if you get one of these, well, actually you'd probably need to switch around some of your energy because it requires a Psychic and a Dark energy in order to use its attack. So, you're probably best just removing the Noibats from your deck altogether. However, if you do play Psychic and Dark, this thing has Echolocation for its ability. If any damage is done to this Pokemon by attacks, flip a coin. If heads, prevent that damage. Now, any other effects still apply, such as, you know, getting poisoned or anything that happens to your opponent, but you at least do prevent the damage, which is pretty cool. Also, Boom Burst, it does 30 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon. That's pretty nice. The only thing is, you don't apply weakness and resistance for the benched Pokemon, so keep that in mind. And 100 hit points isn't fantastic, but hey, it's not terrible either. So here's another interesting card, Super Scoop Up. It's an item, you can play as many of these as you want during your turn, and you flip a coin. If heads, put one of your Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your hand. Why on earth would you want to do that, you may ask? Well, the reason is, if, let's say you have something that's been weakened and has received a lot of damage. Well, by putting it back into your hand, you get that Pokemon and can place it back down without any damage on it. The only downside is you lose the energy, although you don't entirely lose it because they go back to your hand. Also, all the evolution lines of the Pokemon return to your hand as well. The only downside is it's a coin flip, so if you get tails, this card does nothing, which kind of stinks. Oh, another Fossil Researcher and a Hitmonlee. Again, this was in the Dark Hammer deck. Stretch Kick, 30 to one of the benched. Spiral Kick for 30 to the active. So that's kind of interesting. It's not the greatest, but, you know, for a starting card, it's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Okay, so let's take a look at this pack now. Now we have a Golett. Not actually that terrible. 90 hit points for a basic that evolves. And, well, Pound's rather mediocre, but Rock Smash for a Psychic and 2 colorless, it does 30, and if you get heads, it does 60. Total, that is. That's not too bad, I guess. Alright, Machop. Plusle. This is actually, this was a great card in the pre-release. Plusle has Positive Hand. You discard a basic energy card from your hand. If you do, you draw 2 cards. Drawing cards is really useful in the Pokemon trading card game. Now, a pre-release is a little different structure because you're restricted only to using these cards. If you have very little else for your deck, this might be a really good option. However, the downside is, as you get better cards, this is definitely something that will become obsolete quite quickly, because 2 cards isn't that great. But if you have nothing better, even if you're not playing electric in your deck, by the way, just throwing a few of these in if you're just starting out can really help, because you're more likely to have a lot of basic energy in your deck, and you can draw some extra cards. Every card you draw is, you know, maybe one less you have to wait for the thing you really want. Alright, there's a Clefairy. There's one of those Eevee, which are really nice. I talked about this in the Enchanted Echo deck, but it's so cool because when you attach a basic energy card from your hand to this, you can search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon that's the same type, and then you put it onto it to evolve it immediately. This can even be done on the first turn. It kind of circumvents that rule, which is really nice. Hey, and it's a foil version of it. That's cool. And a Politoed. So remember that Poly Whirl that I saw earlier? Well, this thing works quite well with it. Its ability, King's Song, you ignore all colorless energy in the attack of each of your Poliwag, Poliwhirl, and Poliwrath's attacks. Each of those Pokemon have free colorless attacks. That's amazing. The only thing is it doesn't affect itself because it doesn't say Politoed. It's only the other 3. But that means you can use Poliwhirl's attack for free. It doesn't cost you anything, which is awesome. On top of that, this has Hyper Voice, 1 water, 2 colorless, and it does 70. So that's fairly decent if you're running a water deck. Alright, here's another supporter card. Battle Reporter. You draw cards until you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent. It's not fantastic, but hey, you know what? It still kind of works early on. There are much better cards to use than that, though. Hitmonchan. So you flip 2 coins, it does 20 more damage for each head. So for 2, it can do up to 60 damage. Additionally, you can do Mach Cross if you add an extra fighting energy, and it does 60 right off the bat, which is pretty nice. Alright, there's Scrafty. Again, this was in the... also, this would go fairly okay in the Dark Hammer deck, which Scrafty's already in. And you might as well take the Scrafty out of that, because it's not really all that great, to be honest. It really isn't. Okay, we've got a few packs down, and we got a few more to go. Hopefully, you're learning a whole bunch from this. And, you know, again, I haven't seen anything too cool yet, but as you can see, sometimes it does take a little bit to get really cool cards. You just gotta stick to it. Anyway, here's a Cubchoo. Nothing too fantastic there, but it does evolve into that bear tick that we saw earlier, and that makes it kind of, well, necessary, I guess. Shelmet, not all that great, really. Golett, we've already seen that. Trapinch, we need to play this if we're playing the Flygon. Mountain Munch discards the top card of your opponent's deck. So not only might you get something pretty useful that they're going to lose if you use that attack, when you run out of cards in your deck and then you try to draw a card at the beginning of your turn, if you have no cards in your deck at that point, you lose. Now, you could actually draw if it's during your turn. If you deck yourself, as it's called, during your turn, It doesn't actually result in a loss right then. It's only if you can't draw at the beginning of your turn. But using that a few times, it can certainly help. There's the Minun. Hey, it's a reverse foil flagon. That's cool. I've already talked about that, though. Hariyama, it's kind of interesting. Its thick fat ability gives it essentially a weakness to fire, or resistance, I'm sorry. A resistance to fire or water, but it reduces it by 30. Not too bad. Rocket Slap for 80, but that retreat cost is brutal. Oh, here's a really nice card. This is a great card if you're just starting out in the game. It's a rare, unfortunately, but you can still find them relatively easily. So, Dedenne here. For 1 colorless, you search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. So that's with entrainment, and that's great. Being able to get the Pokemon that you want to use out into play, that saves you the trouble of drawing them, and that's really nice. You can also start with this, and then use that move on the first turn of the game if you go second. Remember, the player that wins the coin flip at the beginning of the game, they can't attack on their first turn. The player that goes second, and again, you can actually choose whether you go first or second. So if you're playing a lot of these and you think you might draw one, going second would allow you to use entrainment right away. But usually you're better off going first. Additionally, for 1 colorless, it does Energy Short, which does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. This is actually great, because so often your opponent might have something with, say, 3 energy on it, and then you're going to hit it for 60 damage for just 1 energy. Additionally, one of the big competitive cards out there is Yveltal-EX, and it's weak to lightning, meaning you can do a lot of damage if you use Energy Short on that. It's a good counter for a rather competitive card. So definitely if you're beginning the card game, get a few of these. They will help, and they can be placed in any deck. You don't have to put them in just an electric deck because, look, they use colorless attacks. That's awesome. Mean Shout, not really all that great to be honest. Oh, there's a Jaw Fossil. It's just like the Sail Fossil that I talked about earlier, except it's for Tyrant instead of Amora. And then there's the code card, which I'm keeping for myself. Alright, until I get an EX, of course, or something nice and cool and shiny and fun, but haven't had too much luck so far. Alright, so here's Makuhito. We've seen that. We've seen Drowsy. What is that again? Whenever your opponent flips a coin during his or her turn, you treat it as tails. That's kind of funny. It's not all that great, but it is kind of funny still. Alright, we got Scraggy. We got Bellsprout. Meanfu. Hey, now we have a reverse foil Beartic. Oh boy, what is this? It is an upside down Mega Heracross-EX. Now this is the normal rare, or the normal version of it. There's actually a secret rare version that I did get in the previous box opening video, so this is neat. This is the other one. How you can tell, the number here, hopefully you can see it, it's 5 out of 111, or whatever it is. Yeah, I think that's it. If it has sort of a black looking border like around here, and it's number 5, then it's the normal foil one, or the normal one. I guess they're all foil. But yeah. So, Mega Pokemon, how do they work? Well, you have to have the base Heracross-EX in this case. You need to have that out. And then it's sort of like an evolution where you place this on top of it. However, it ends your turn immediately. Whenever one of your Pokemon becomes a Mega Evolution Pokemon, your turn ends. However, it has Big Bang Horn for 180 damage. However, it does 10 less for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So you need to keep this thing healed in order to use it really well. There are some things that let you heal or perhaps move energy around. I don't remember if there's anything like that for grass energy though. You'd have to use probably rainbow energy, but it's still kind of interesting. Anyway, that's a good card, so I'll set it aside over there. And we'll take a look at the Pancham there. Oh, here's another great card. It's awesome just in general. You'll definitely want to get a bunch of these for fighting type decks. If you're playing Dark Hammer, as soon as you get these, toss them in. They're great. This is a special energy, meaning you can only have up to 4 of these in your deck. they are not counted as a basic energy, so anything that says a basic energy doesn't let you count this. However, it has an additional effect which makes it really cool. This can only be attached to fighting Pokemon, and it provides a fighting energy just like a basic fighting energy would, but only to a fighting Pokemon. Now while this is attached, the attacks of the fighting Pokemon this card is attached to do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, and that's before applying weakness and resistance. So basically, this, when attached to one of your fighting Pokemon, increases the damage it does by 20. If you have 2 strong energy on your Pokemon, it'll increase it by 40. And that's before doing weakness and resistance. So that's really darn good. Really darn good indeed. Definitely want to get some of those. There's a normal Klefki, and here I will even give you the code card. Yeah, that'll celebrate the nice Mega Heracross-EX that I got. Okay, so got something rather cool. Got some things that could help either of those 2 decks that I got. And if you're getting any of those decks, well, the stuff I got would help you too. I can't trade though, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Anyway, Mienfoo, Magmar, Shelmet, Bellsprout. We've seen a lot of these things before. Oh, there's a reverse foil Clefable. Now, this was in the Enchanted Echo deck. It's not really all that great. Follow Me lets you switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active, so you choose who to send out. That's nice. And then Moonblast does 30, and then prevents 30 from any damage that the opponent does next turn, or at least the defending Pokemon. If they retreat or something, you know, that effect would go away. There's another Flygon, and a Watchog. This thing's kind of interesting. Your opponent reveals his or her hand. Choose an item card you find there. Your opponent shuffles that card into his or her deck. So you get rid of some of their item cards. It's not all that great, but, you know. And then Thorough Crunch, 30 damage, so kind of weak. However, you flip 2 coins. For each heads, you discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. That makes it quite disruptive. Hey, here we go. Fighting Stadium. While this is in play, again, being a stadium, you place it into play and it affects both players. But while it's in play, the attacks of each fighting Pokemon in play do 20 more damage to the defending Pokémon-EX, and that's before applying weakness and resistance. So while this is in play, any of your fighting Pokemon, they do 20 more damage to any Pokémon-EX that's active, or at least the defending one. So that's kind of nice. There's a lot of Pokémon-EX that are being played, so that's a decent counter to them. Here's also another Pancham, not all that useful really, and then the code card back there. Alright, so we're more than halfway through. Let's see what else we get in this half of the booster box. Again, the second half will be in another video just to kind of, you know, keep length down. Again, I'm trying to be very thorough just to tell you if you're beginning what kind of cards to look for. Again, we've seen all of these so far. There's the other Clefairy that's probably a little less good. And then there's a foil Makuhita. Oh, it's a Sylveon! So this is the star of the Enchanted Echo deck. Sylveon. It has 90 hit points and is a fairy type. Curly Ribbon, it does 30 for 1, which is very nice. You move an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon to one of his or her bench Pokemon. That's useful because you can put it on something that isn't very useful. Let's say you put one of their grass energy on their active that's attacking you. Put it onto one of their lightning Pokemon that doesn't need it. Yeah, that's great. It's almost like removing their energy. Additionally, it has Echoed Voice, which for 1 fairy energy and then 2 colorless, or 2 of anything, it does 50 damage. And during your next turn, this Pokemon's Echoed Voice attack does 50 more damage. Now, that means when you use this the first time, it does 50. When you use it the second time, it does 100 damage for 3. And then when you use it the third time, it does 100 damage again. Because it doesn't keep stacking, it's always 50 plus 50. It's not 50 plus 50 plus 50 and so on. But it's still pretty okay. Not the greatest fairy Pokemon in the world, to be honest, but if you get any more of these, you might as well put them into your Enchanted Echo deck. Also, there's a Licky Licky. I already talked about this in the Dark Hammer deck. It has Knockoff, 3 for 50. You discard a random card from your opponent's hand, so that's kind of nice. And then Lickichop for 4. It does 60 damage, and you flip a coin until you get tails, doing 30 more damage for each heads. Very nice. A lot of energy, though, but since it can be anything, you can pretty much put that in any of your decks. which is cool. You need the Licky Tongue, of course, but yeah. Here's Full Heal. You remove all special conditions from your active Pokemon. It's rather basic, but, you know, it's sort of a staple. And then Fighting Stadium. We've already seen that. Alright. So, yeah, pretty interesting things to help both of the decks so far. And again, you know, maybe if you only get 1 or 2 packs, you can still get some useful cards to help power up any of your decks, which is kind of nice. Alright, so here's Torchic. Pancham. Again, we're seeing a lot of repeats now, but that's fine. Machop, Makuhita, Skorupi, Clowncher, and... oh, look at that! Now, this is what's called a full art card. If you're not familiar, you might have heard full art, or sometimes they're abbreviated as FA for full art. They're basically a super cool version of another card. In this case, this is just a super rare version of the Battle Reporter supporter card that I talked about earlier. It has the same effect, it's the same thing, it just looks fancier. Think of it sort of like a shiny version of the card, not the reverse holo, but it's pretty rare. Now this isn't really that great of a card, but it does look really awesome full art, I'm not going to lie. So let's go ahead and set that over there next to the Mega Heracross. Energy switch. Actually, I haven't talked about this yet. You move a basic energy from one of your Pokemon to another of your Pokemon. So you can't move strong energy, but it still lets you move any basic energy. And that's actually pretty nice. Scrafty and Sail Fossil. So here, have a lovely code card. Again, only the first one to enter that will get it. So, good luck! Alright, so 2 pretty nifty cards so far. Let's see what else we can get from this half of the booster box. So we got Gothita, Machop, Torchic, Lickitung, Eevee, a reverse foil Hariyama, and Hypno. So we haven't looked at this Hypno yet. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. So for 1 Psychic, your opponent reveals his or her hand. You may choose a supporter card you find there, and if you do, your opponent plays that supporter card. However, you make all decisions for that card, so that's interesting. It's rather complex. Not all that great, but it can cause some problems. If, let's say, they have a Professor Sycamore or a Professor Juniper, they do the same thing, where you discard your hand, and then you draw 7 cards. Sometimes players avoid playing that card because they're waiting for something, so you can choose if you want to have them do that. Also, it has Hypnoblast for 60, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. Kind of underwhelming there. Alright, a Corina Training Center. So, this is another stadium. And while it's in play, each Stage 1 and Stage 2 Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's, gets plus 30 hit points. So that's kind of interesting in evolution decks and stuff. And then there's a Machoke. Alright, so, a few packs left in this half. Again, I do thank you for sticking around here. I know this isn't, you know, the typical video because I'm really kind of explaining a lot of things. So even though it won't appeal to everyone, if it can help get people excited about the trading card game and maybe taking a look at some of the cards and thinking, hey, I've got that. I can try build a deck with that or use that. Well, that definitely helps. And if you get duplicates too, remember, it's fine to use duplicates. You want to use duplicates. You can play up to 4 of any card in your deck, and it's very helpful to do so in a lot of cases. Alright, so here's Golurk. I already showed you the Golett earlier, but this thing is 130 hit points strong, and that's nice. Psychic type, which may seem weird. I guess I hadn't addressed that. Ghost is treated as Psychic in the card game. For 1 Psychic, 2 colorless, it has Wreck. I know, if there's any Stadium card in play, it does 60 more damage, and then you discard that Stadium card. So, that's kind of decent. 120 for 3. You could play a whole bunch of Stadium cards in your deck and keep playing them down and then discarding them. That could be fun. Also, Golurk Hammer for 100 damage. It takes 4 energy, but 100 damage is pretty solid, so definitely worth considering. Alright, so we got that. Got another Licky. Combuskin. I know we've seen enough Torchics, but here's the Combuskin. It's relatively basic, probably nothing I need to explain there. And then there's a normal Battle Reporter. Alright, well, again, if you lack card drawing supporter cards, you know, play them until you get a few more. Well, at least better ones. Things like Professor Sycamore or N, or there are a few other things that are kind of handy. Alright, Pancham, Magmar, Fairy, Clauncher, Pikachu, Raichu, Foil Raichu. Oh, hey! So there's the Blaziken. Now this is actually really decent, especially as you get better cards. So, 140 hit points, quite nice. For 2 colorless, it does Clutch for 50 damage, and the defending Pokemon can't retreat during your opponent's next turn. That can be very valuable in a lot of instances. Additionally, its main attack, Burning Shot, for 2 fire, 2 colorless, you discard 2 energy attached to this Pokemon, and then it does 150 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. It can be anything. Anything on their field you get to hit for 150 damage. You have to discard 2 energy, true, but you can discard things that provide 2 energy, such as a double colorless energy. Additionally, if you have anything that can attach energy to Blaziken, such as an Emboar, I guess. I think that's still allowed. I don't know if Emboar is still legal or not. I know it would be in the expanded format, but anything that lets you accelerate energy, even like Flygon, dump a whole bunch of energy on this and then just keep using it to do 150. Now, if you don't have things to help you get energy back onto this, actually, think back to, what was it, Flash Fire. You could use, what was it? There's some card that lets you attach fire energy, and that's really great. That would work well with Blaziken, so it's a good card. Ooh, look at this. It's a sparkling robe. It's so sparkly. It's a Pokemon tool, so you attach it, and then the Pokemon this card is attached to can't be affected by any special conditions. Plus, you remove any special conditions affecting that Pokemon. It's not perfect, but it can help out in a few situations here and there. And there's a Mean Shao and a Hitmonlee. Alright, well that's fine. Let's take a look at another booster pack. Getting near the end of this half of the box, so that's good. Alright, Pikachu, Slackoth, Cubchoo, Patrat, Eevee, and then a Foil Drowsy and a Drapion. Now, the nice thing about the Drapion is it can do a lot of damage. 110 hit points, and it does Venoshock for 20. If your opponent's active Pokemon is poisoned, this attack does 40 more damage. So it does 60 damage if the foe is poisoned. Plus, there is a card that, if you're a competitive player, you'll know it as Hypnotoxic Laser, that it poisons the Pokemon no matter what. It's an item card. You poison them, and if you get heads, they're also asleep. So you definitely want to play those if you have Drapion or Drapion in your deck. That would be really nice. Additionally, there's another card from that same set. I think it's Plasma Freeze. It is called... oh, what was it called? Verbank City. Duh, how could I forget that? So poison Pokemon, instead of taking 1 damage counter between turns, they take 3 damage counters. So, if they're poisoned, which you can do through the Hypnotoxic Laser, they are going to take 60 damage from Venoshock, and then another 30 between turns, for 90 damage for 1. So that's very nice. Additionally, for 4, it has Venomous Fang, which does 80 damage. It takes 2 dark, 2 colorless, 80 damage, and they're now poisoned. So you can use that in Venoshock, although realistically you're better off just keep using Venomous Fang instead of trying some weird combo with that. Another Sparkling Robe. Oh, there's that Tyrant card. It's not all that great on its own. It has Gnaw, it has Crunch. Crunch, if you get heads with that, you discard an energy, but it evolves into a really awesome Pokemon. Now this is a restored Pokemon, so even though it looks like a basic, you need to use a card in order to place this onto your bench. For instance, if you have the Jaw Fossil card, you could place it onto your bench if you find it on the bottom 7 cards of your deck. Or you could use the Fossil Researcher card. I showed both of these earlier on, but that's how you get it into play. You can't just set it down from your hand as if it were a basic Pokemon. You can still evolve it as if it were, though, once it's into play. Alright, just a few more packs left. Let's see what we get in this pack. What do you say? So you got a Minun, that's kind of okay, I guess. A Bellsprout, Scraggy, Cubchoo, Golett, a foil Scraggy, and a Tornadus. Now, this was in the Enchanted Echo deck, if I recall, and this works quite nice with Battle Reporter. So it uses all colorless energy, making it very nice to splash into pretty much any deck you're playing. It has Push Down, 2 colorless, it does 20 damage, and you can have your opponent switch his or her active with one of their bench. Now they get to choose in this instance, and they choose after the damage has been done, but that's still cool. But then its big attack is Twister Throw. So 3 for 60 on a 110 basic Pokemon that isn't an EX, that's not too shabby at all. But if you have the same number of cards in your hand as your opponent, it does 60 more damage. So that's 3 for 120. The trick is just play a battle supporter, a battle reporter, a supporter card called that, right before you use Twister Throw, and then it'll be awesome. So that's pretty nice. Alright, Poliwhirl, Watchog, and a Jaw Fossil. Alrighty. So, 3 more packs left on this half of the box. Let's go ahead and open it up. Noibat, Trapinch, Electabuzz, Poliwag, a Plusle, ooh, Foil Machamp. So, the Machamp was already in the, what was it called? The Dark Hammer deck. It has 150 hit points and is a fighting type Pokemon, so that's pretty strong. Plus you can use a strong energy on it, which is great. However, it also has an ability that makes it sort of like a built-in strong energy. Fighting Fury. Each of your fighting Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon before applying weakness and resistance. So this doesn't even have to be active. It just grants that effect to all of your fighting type Pokemon, which is wonderful. It includes itself, by the way, meaning Machamp Crush for 3 fighting energy does 100 damage, not 80, which is pretty nifty. And on top of that, during your opponent's next turn, any damage done by attacks from the defending Pokemon is reduced by 40. That gives it a lot of extra bulk, which is nice. And again, being a fighting type, you can put strong energy on it to make it do even more damage. Whoa! Hey, now this is a wonderful card to put into the Dark Hammer deck. In fact, it's even a wonderful card for competitive, really good decks, because look at those attacks. It hits so hard. This is a Pokémon-EX. Again, if you're not familiar with Pokémon-EX, how they work, they are considered a basic Pokemon. See how it says basic? But wait, Lucario evolves from Riolu. How does that work? Well, I know, it does. But Pokemon-EX, typically nowadays, they are basic Pokemon that don't have to evolve. You just set them down. It has 180 hit points for a basic, too. That's insane. And it has really good attacks. For 1 fighting energy, it does Missile Jab for 30. And it isn't affected by resistance. That's amazing right from the get-go. However, imagine putting a strong energy on it instead. You're doing 50 for 1 strong energy. Wow. And you can stack Machamps with that too, although most competitive players probably won't be doing that. Then, for 2 fighting energy, you do Corkscrew Smash for 60 damage, and again, doing more if you have strong energy. And then you draw cards until you have 6 cards in your hand. That's amazing. You can use a whole bunch of cards from your hand and then use that, hit for some pretty good damage, and replenish your hand. Plus, for 3 fighting energy, it has Somersault Kick for 100 damage. And again, that is before any strong energy. So, why on earth did they make a card this strong? Well, you see, Pokemon-EX are a little different. They have a special rule here. When a Pokemon-EX has been knocked out, your opponent takes 2 prize cards. So if they can take this thing down, they get 2 prize cards for it. And rightfully so. These are all over the place, Pokemon-EX, in real competitive formats. They're really good to have. They're also pretty darn rare. Lucario-EX is a wonderful one that, if you get that, definitely start making a deck around it, because even that on its own is probably better than most everything else that you might have at this point in time if you're just a newer player. Okay, so then there's a few other cards here and there. Oh, there's the Vibrava. That's actually really helpful with Flygon, going back from the Pokemon-EX for a moment here for just more, kind of standard fun stuff. You search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. That is amazing for setting up Flygon's Rainbow Shower because it gets you extra energy cards that you can just attach when you evolve it. All right, take a look here. Oh yeah, here, have another code for the Lucario-EX. Hopefully you'll get one when you enter it onto the trading card game online. Whoa, I know, I'm just attacking my camera. What's the matter with me? I'm letting loose my furious fists. Oh man, you should see my camera set up to record this. I'm actually having to stick my arms through the tripod. That's how I get this cool angle. All right, so we have a Clefairy, a Trapinch, Skorupi, Shelmet. Actually, did I show Skorupi? I don't remember. It's not all that great, really. Mienfoo, Foil Torchic. Oh, there's the Aurorus. So it's a bit of a hassle to get out because you need to get the Amora out, and it's a revived or restored Pokemon, so you can't just place it on your bench. However, 130 hit points, and it has Ice Shield. Any damage done by an opponent's attack to each of your water Pokemon that has any water energy attached to it is reduced by 20. So that's kind of cool. It gives it a little bit of defense if any of your water Pokemon have a water energy. And then for 4 energy, 1 water, 3 colorless, it has Icy Wind for 70, and your opponent's active Pokemon is now asleep. Realistically, there are probably better cards in this. It's not all that great because it requires a lot to set it up. You need the Amora here, which isn't that fantastic, and being a restored Pokemon, it's not easy to get out. So yeah, there's Super Scoop Up. I already talked about that. Here's Vigoroth, which you would need in a Slackoth line. It's actually not terrible, even if you don't have the Slacking. 3 for 70, if you get Tails it does 20, and being all colorless you can put it into anything. If you're just starting out and you don't have much better, this is great to put into your deck. Alright, the final half of the box. Let's see what's inside. Well, an Eevee, that's a good sign. Alright, so Eevee, Skorupi, Drowsy, Bellsprout, Lickitung, a Foil Aurorus, and a Glaceon. So this is an interesting evolution. It's actually not too shabby. And again, you can get it out really quickly by using the new Eevee. For 1 water, it does Blizzard for 30, which that's not too shabby for 1 energy. On top of that, it does 10 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. That adds up really quickly, and that goes great with, say, the Poliwhirl. Additionally, it has Ice Edge. 3 energy, 1 water, 2 colorless for 60. And if you get heads, it does 30 more. That's not too shabby at all. Pretty decent Glaceon, really, and it's weak to metal. You don't see that all over the place. Weeping Bell. And a full heal, and another strong energy. Yay, so strong. So the strong energies work great with the Lucario-EX that you see here. Again, this is a pretty decent half of a box, I'd say. There's the really cool cards. And then there's this half over here. But you know what? I'm going to save that for a separate video because I really wanted a chance to kind of go in depth with each and every one of these cards just to give you an idea of what might be good if you're just starting out. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you have, you know, there's a nice little thumbs up button down somewhere that just kind of tells me, oh yeah, you know what? I really appreciated you going over this stuff because I know that there's a lot of Pokemon fans out there that play the video game and, you know, they might have seen some cards but don't know how they work and might want to get into it without being bombarded with like, oh, you have to use, you know, 4 of this and 4 of that and all these expensive Pokemon-EX cards. I think sometimes being able to explain a nice starting point or some things to look for, like, you know, if you're opening a pack and you get one of these, well, it's great, but, you know, realistically, if you want a competitive deck, you're going to need like 3 of these. But even just having something to start you off and pointing out the cards that can help you get there, hopefully that's at least helpful to you. I don't know, let me know. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it. Again, this isn't sort of geared towards competitive players, which is a bit of a twist from my usual box opening videos. And that's why I'm only doing 1 half right now, so I can be a little bit more thorough. This half will go faster though, don't worry. Okay, but that being said, again, over on my website, I'm holding a giveaway. I'm giving away a full box, actually 2 sets of full boxes plus a set of theme decks for 2 people. Or, you know, so yeah. 1 person will get 1 set, 1 person will get the other. That makes sense. But that only runs until October 6, 2014. So follow the link in the description to check it out. You gotta do so before October 6, 2014. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will open up the second half of the Furious Fist box and again, sort of explain things, although I won't explain anything I've already gone over in this video because that'd be redundant. I'll do that on the next episode, I guess, of Marriland's Furious Fists box opening videos. Oh yeah, I'll see you next time, everyone.